welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Inside Track podcast. I've got a fabulous guest with us this morning, Simon Wilkinson from Tanita. How are you?
Yeah, Ryan, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for the kind intro. I will supply you with some monetary or alcoholic thanks for that in the future. Very kind of you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we're trying to get you on for a while because obviously we've known each other for a long time now, and you do some amazing stuff in the industry, which obviously a lot of our guests tend to be gym owners and operators as such, and it's nice to have people on that provide not only an equipment provision, but also a lot of technical stuff behind it. Because obviously your kit just isn't, say, a treadmill that you jump on and run on. There's a lot of science behind what you guys do. So probably the best thing to do, and like we do with all of our guests, is to sort of who is Simon, what's your sort of career background, and what are you doing now?
No problem. Yeah. So let's go. How far back do we go? Let's just go professional career, right? So I took a pretty typical route of some professional sporting aspirations without having the ability to fulfill those professional sporting aspirations, and then went into the coaching route. So I had 11, 12 years as a strength and conditioning coach, working in professional sport teams mainly, and then at the back end of my time, I started out in Manchester City, working with the elite development squad. Did a little bit of time then, first team at Rochdale Football Club, which is where I have bumped into Glenn from Humans in a previous life, but we didn't know each other, but we must have crossed paths several times then, because he was working with Northampton. It's funny how that life spins back round now, and we're both in a completely different sector, but back acquainted to each other. And then, I went from Rochdale Football Club, fancied a change then, so went into rugby, worked for nearly 5 years for Salford Rugby League, Salford City Reds into Salford Red Devils. I was there for their takeover and big transition. And then worked for Sale Rugby Union for a short time. And then basically got fed up of getting sacked because the manager got sacked. So
that's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the challenge of working in sport. You have to be willing to go anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, basically, if you want to maintain a job in sport. And with starting a family life, that wasn't the best scenario. So I came out of sort of team sport, worked self-employed for a short time as an S&C coach. And then this opportunity arose via my wife, ironically enough, who Tanita first tried to employ. They approached my wife for the role. And she very tactfully went to an interview and put the job on the plate for me. And 6 years later, I'm still here. So it's I have to thank her for that in public as well as in private. But hopefully I've done a good enough job to establish myself there after a number of years now.
What just quickly, what does your wife do?
So she used to work within product training and sales. Woodway Treadmills was who she worked for. Okay. Simon Bradley from Tanita. He knew my wife. They were looking then to employ a sort of sales or commercial role within the fitness industry. He approached my wife about the role, and she kind of went, thanks, but actually, I know someone he's not massively happy what he's doing right now. It might interest him. And then me, with zero commercial knowledge, entered the commercial world 6 years ago. But I think that's good. I think it allows me a sort of footing and a background in, I guess, on the other side of the fence, so to speak.
I think that's really important for what you do, Simon, because I think if you have a look at, and we'll talk about Tanita and what it provides a little bit more, but I think with the science basis and what your kit delivers, I think you really need someone who's got that background in fitness, rather than just management and whatever. So, I mean, I've worked with you for a while, and I am an ex-PT, but more management and sales and whatever that floated my boat far more than PT did. So, I think having someone like you selling that product and advising people on that product is far superior than having someone like me, who the science behind it probably isn't as strong as someone like yourself.
Yeah, I think that's massively important. I think what we try and do at Tanita, and what I certainly try and do personally is offer that support. You know, it's great when an operator or a gym or a clinician or, you know, whoever it is buys our technology. That's fantastic. You know, ultimately it keeps a roof over my head. But then working with them so they're successful with it and it has a genuine impact on their business and on what they do and on their clients or on their patients, that's equally as important, because that's where we get that growth and that success. And, you know, that word of mouth, that's really important. You know, it fills me with a great deal of pride when people call me and go, I've spoken with whoever it might be, with Ryan, and he's recommended I pick up the phone to you because you're going to be able to help us work with this product, not just sell us something, but help us work with it. And I think that my background in sports science and on that side of the fence certainly helps with that. And then over the period of this last 6 years, you know, that commercial part of my brain has grown. You know, when I first started working for Tanita, it was all about the data for me personally. It was all about the numbers and the metrics and what they meant. And I didn't really appreciate the impact it could have on things like retention and revenue generation and the more business commercial side of things. I didn't have a great understanding of that.
That's a really interesting point, actually. Let's jump on that, because when you look at I mean, obviously you can explain in more detail what the Tanita machines do, but has it changed over a period of time in terms of what the clubs are using these machines for? Because, I mean, obviously, when I first joined the industry, they pretty much, you took it as a measurement to allow you then to show improvement, but they didn't have necessarily huge commercial benefits. They were seen more of a almost help PT, help the instructors, but you didn't look at them as a commercial piece of equipment. So, but now, obviously, we're looking at this to drive numbers. That's the whole idea. If you're going to, it's got to have an ROI on everything. People buy now has to have an ROI, and you guys are now proving that. So, have you seen that change over time?
Yeah, for sure. I think let's wind right back, just in case there's anybody listening who doesn't know what a Tanita device does and doesn't know what we're talking about. Basically, Tanita produce body composition analysis technology. Basically, it's a scale that you step on and it weighs you, but ultimately and importantly, it tells you what your weight is made up of. So it's going to break down the body fat, the muscle mass, the total body water, the visceral fat, give you a metabolic age, lots and lots and lots of data. And you're exactly right, Ryan. When I think about my conversations 6 years ago, my conversations were all very much about, what's that? What does it do? Or, yeah, we want to use it for our personal trainers to allow them to track progress. And it was that niche. It was basically the tool you use to track progress. Fast forward 6 years later now, and very, very few of my conversations, if any of my conversations, involve what is it anymore. Yeah. Everybody's, or the vast majority of people, are pretty familiar with what body composition analysis technology is. And all my conversations now are around maximizing the benefits of it. So yes, it is a tool that's going to allow your PTs to track their progress, or your members to track their progress by themselves. You know, if you're using one of our integrated partners like BodyTrax or CoreView or the eGym technology and Pulse Fitness integrations that we have, members can use it themselves. Yeah. And it's working with people now. The conversations we have are now more about how we can use it. How can we use it to maximize revenue? What can we charge, or can we charge, or what membership tiers can we include it into? Or what are our options to have one, not should we have one? Because I think the vast majority of people in the industry now are there on that plate of, we need to be doing more than just weighing people and discussing their BMI. It's not enough detail. We have to very, very infrequently justify the technology anymore and why you should be using it over just weighing somebody or just calipers. Now we're talking about definitely talking more about the strategy behind it. But that's only really come through in the last, I would say, post-COVID, where there's been a big increase and emphasis on health and supporting.
I think people understand their health a lot more. Yeah. I think the one great thing about COVID, pardon me, which we didn't really have before, was people used to train for aesthetics and whatever, but they never really understood their health measurements. And I think what COVID did, it made people start going, actually, I need to understand my visceral fat. I need to understand my body fat. I need to understand what my body's made up of so that I can start making an impact. I need to be healthier. What comes with that? And I can imagine the likes of Garmin and Apple Watch and everything have sold loads of theirs as well, just on the simple fact that people want that data now.
That's it. I think that there's been two sides of that coin, if you will. There's definitely been an individual increase of health awareness. Yeah, I need to know more about this. I need to know more about my health in general, not just how I look and how I feel, but what are those numbers telling me? You know, and during COVID, we saw a ridiculous increase in our consumer scales because we develop a home use scale alongside our professional scales. And the numbers for those went through the roof because people suddenly, one, they couldn't access that machine they had in the gym and they still wanted the data, but they also wanted to know the data more than ever before. They wanted to know how healthy they were, how at risk of having a serious or suffering from serious symptoms with COVID. So there was that individual awareness increase. But then we've also seen the operators go, well, we need to support our members more with their health, not just telling them how much they weigh, not just putting on programs for them, but really, really signposting them and helping them with becoming healthier and living a healthier lifestyle for a prolonged period of time. And I think that's when we look at the benefits of the technology, it's that prolonged period of time that we're talking about. Because
I think the interesting thing is here is, and this has happened with a lot of the clients that we work with as well, that people have suddenly realized that we don't just provide a facility. We have to start looking at the client journeys and how we can influence people's behaviors along that route. And just having a gym isn't good enough now to drive strong retention. So as the people have got more into the data, more into the wellness and their understanding of it, we've also had to change what we do in the clubs. So client journey is massive. I mean, you probably hear me harp on about it all the time. I've got another post going out today about it. But client journey is huge. Mm-hmm. And I think the likes of the Tanita allow you to have those one contact point. So you have a contact point at the start because it pushes someone into an environment. You speak to an instructor, have that taken, and then you've got regular agreed timescales in which you can meet up with the instructor, and it gives you a reason to have those conversations, which is, to me, amazing.
The conversations are key, right? I can remember I went to a conference really early in my time with Tanita, and there was an element of it on retention. And one thing stuck in my head more than anything else, and this must have been, I'm almost certain in my first year of working with Tanita, so it's going to be six years ago. And the one thing that stuck in my head was he just stood there and went, talk to your members. And then there was silence. And he went, no, just talk to them. It's not rocket science. We're going to go into the rocket science behind it, but in principle, it's not rocket science. Talk, communicate, engage.
Absolutely.
Gyms don't do that enough. And that is the one thing that has stuck with me. Just talk to your members.
But it's giving them that opportunity. So it's finding those touch points that you can sort of go, okay, along that journey, client joins, when do we? And it's giving that client something to come back with. And I always found in all the clubs I've worked with that have had a body composition, and 90% of mine have been Tanita, to be fair, it's always driven a conversation. So you do that, you take the body, and one of the biggest ones is this biological age.
Yes.
So you get someone who's 47 like me, suddenly he scores 57, you're like, I'm not an old man, I need to do. And what that does is and then every month they come back, stand on the machine, let's do it, rewrite the program, or just give them a bit of a motivational talk. You're doing really well, whatever that is. It just gives you those regular contact points, which an email doesn't do. I mean, I'm all big for automations, don't get me wrong, but those automated messages never have the same impact as being able to get someone in front of an instructor, in front of the manager, in front of whoever, and have a conversation. And that's what Tanita does.
That's it. The automated systems become a part of what you do, but if you're reliant on them, you're in trouble, right? I think we still strive for human contact, and it was very much that talk to people more, but what do you talk to them about? It has to be relevant. It has to be impactful. If it's not, if it's just I genuinely witnessed within a leisure centre a couple of years ago, I witnessed staff given a target of talk to 15 members per shift. And I watched staff go, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, tick, 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 tick. I've spoken to 15 members this shift. And I was like, wow, okay. I mean, yes, you have spoken to 15 members this shift, but how relevant, how impactful? Relevant, kind of, because it was the morning and you said good morning. How impactful? Very, very, very little impact from that, apart from general politeness, which should never be overlooked. So I think when you utilize Tanita technology, it gives you that, fundamental, this is what you can talk about. If you're struggling to generate conversation, or if you're struggling for communication touch points, here's your health check-in. Here's your Tanita measurement. Discuss an element of health. Focus on that metabolic age, because that's the one measurement that nobody needs a degree in sports science about to understand. Exactly. I'm 47. It tells me I'm 57. Help me, please. And then, you then have to have a structure in place, which is why the member journeys and the structure of the member journeys are really important. Having that system in place to go, okay, we've done this first one now. We're going to get you booked in for another one in 3 weeks. Here's the date in the calendar. Here's who you're going to do it with. Here's some targets for you in the meantime. Give them that little bit of short-term accountability. Get them booked in again. And then repeat that process.
I think the great thing about it as well, Simon, is it actually, and this is what we found, it actually engages people who don't want a program. So a lot of clubs that I work with go, a lot of the members don't want a program written, so they don't come and see us. And they're going, I get that. A lot of people have, let's be honest, there's very few people in society now that have never been to a gym. Now, there's obviously different levels of experience, but there's quite a big group of people now. When I joined the industry, mid-90s, you had 3 types of people: the exercisers, the non-exercisers, and previous exercisers. And the non-exercisers, people who've never been to a gym, was actually quite a big group.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think most people have some experience of a gym. And so you've got this big, broad group of people who go in there, they're happy with their weights, they're happy with their technique, they're happy with their actual training. So where do we have that contact point? Something like Tanita, it doesn't matter whether they're professional athletes or just starting. The impact of the data for their training and being very bespoke to their training and their goals can be really important. So if you've got someone who's obviously looking to build muscle and everything else, their body fat and their muscle composition is really important. Someone who looks to lose weight, their body fat and their biological age may be important. So there's loads of stuff there.
That's it. I think you've summarised really well, Brian, what we mentioned earlier about how 6 years ago it was the machine gyms brought to track progress, and they only ever really used it on those people who wanted their progress tracking. For example, the people who were on the programs designated to them by the gym, or the people who came in going, I want to lose fat. Yeah. Very few people actively pushed the technology and encouraged the other gym users to use it. And those other gym users are equally interested in tracking their progress, perhaps more interested in tracking their progress, because they're really into their data and they're really into their fitness.
And I can imagine most of those have got their watches, they've probably got their whoops, they've got their whatever they are, and they're tracking all this stuff. So
that's it. And we know that strategy behind utilizing Tanita technology is now as much about looking at the measurements and looking at the suitability of measurements for every single person in your gym, not just going, it's for the weight loss clients or it's for the body transformation clients, because you're going to get to about 10% of its capacity if that's all you use it for. Your aesthetics clients, your clients who spend more time taking selfies and looking in the mirror than actually lifting reps, you show them the segmental muscle mass analysis, or you tell them they can track their segmental muscle mass analysis, or they can track their basal metabolic rate because they're calorie counting, right? Or they're more likely to be calorie counting because they want to look a certain way. they might not be aware that machine exists, or they might not think it's suitable for them because it's the body fat machine for weight loss clients. Yeah. But when you look at it from that context, when you go, this is what you might be interested in, that's where then you see that impact on retention, I guess, and impact on the much wider gym community that you're working with. And that's let's say more and more what we're doing now is not so much why you should own a body composition device, it's how you're going to use it within your gym, because you know better than I do, no two gyms are the same, right? They might have they might be in the same town, they might serve the same community, but they're not doing exactly the same thing, and they shouldn't do exactly the same thing. So it's as much about that diversity of use to the technology as it is what the technology is. I think I find that fascinating. I find it really interesting going into gyms, talking to operators, going, look, who's your clientele? What's your mix-up of, of members that come here? Because for some places, it might be 90% people going to lose body fat. In some places, it's 90% people going throwing weights around and lifting as much as they can. And if they try and use any bit of technology in the same way as each other, it's going to be much less impactful on their business. So that.
But the funny thing is, without something like this, very few are able to build an effective client journey. No. Most of the clubs I go into, one of the first things I'll say, one obviously is the finance stuff, and then secondly is let's have a look at your client journeys, and I just get a blank look back. Mm-hmm. There's, we're doing it, but there's no defined client journey to go, okay, what are we trying to do with all these clients? What are we trying to achieve with them? And what journey do you want them to take on? Because we all know the longer that person stays, the more likely they'll spend more money. So the longer they're there, the more they trust you, the more they're likely to buy PT, buy nutrition products, buy, upgrade their membership, transformation packs, whatever it is. The longer they're there, the more likely they are to do that. So how do we take them from ground zero all the way through? So they're really understanding their body, really understanding the performance measures, really understanding how to improve. And by doing that, they stay longer because they're getting results. We all know one of the main reasons why people leave is they don't get results.
Yes.
And, well, what are the three reasons? Top three reasons, Paul Bedford, I'm sure these still apply. But I remember Paul Bedford years ago, cleanliness, not being spoken to by a member or member of staff, so no community, and not achieving your results. They're your top three reasons. You can kill two of those with something like this.
Yes, absolutely. And if you keep it clean, which you've got to do, you're ticking all three. There we go.
Absolutely. Now, one question I did want to ask, obviously, we speak to the likes of Andy King, John Oxley, and all those guys at the Leisure Trust. And those guys are moving massively now from just this fitness to wellness centers. Now, have you guys seen a big change in terms of how the Leisure Trust or that environment's changing to use your guys' technology to help them drive that message forward?
Absolutely. I think you've picked out two fantastic names out of the hat there, because GM Active are one of the operators we work really closely with. And often it's a mix of our technology. So I mentioned the different options and different integrated options earlier that we have. Within the GM Active sort of cohort, there's maybe 5 or 6 different integrations, but all those integrations utilize Tanita technology. And one thing that we're doing at the minute is working much closer with GM Active to try and make sure all those operators, those individual operators like Life Leisure, for example, within GM Active, are maximizing the use of it, because they don't often realize they've got the same thing, because they haven't got the same thing. Some might have body tracks, some might have it linked into Technogym's My Wellness system, but it's the same engine. It's the same Tanita engine and the same data coming out of it. And what we're seeing now is obviously the likes of GM Active are trying to impact community health much more. They're not just the gym. Like, they're really, really trying to not be the gym. They're trying to impact health within that wider community.
And that's a massively different message than someone who's coming to the gym just for their body, to train. I think because of this massive shift to wellness, your kit can play a much bigger role in that.
That's it. I think, I'm bound to say this, but I also say it with confidence. in that gym, it's probably the most important bit of kit. If you're pivoting to wellness or pivoting to health from fitness, it's probably the most important bit of kit, because people don't need a gym to lose body fat. They don't need the gym to lose health, to become healthier. The gym can support them to become healthier, but they don't necessarily need to step on the gym floor. And this is what a lot of those operators are now finding, that if they become the touch point, and that touch point is often a health consultation or a check-in about their body composition, and then some lifestyle options or some lifestyle support, some nutrition support outside of the gym floor. And that's where that impact on community health really comes to the fore, because how many people are ever going to join the gym? It's always going to be limited. It's always be, 15 to 20%. I don't think we'll ever break that point. It's been like that for next to forever. And for me, what some of the operators like Gym Active and also Stevenage Leisure are doing really well is they're going, okay, well, you don't have to join the gym, but we're still going to support you. We're going to put these programs in place. Some of them will involve being on the gym floor. Some of them won't involve being on the gym floor, but they're going to help support you live a healthier life.
And the great thing about it is as well, they're able to measure the results. I think that's really important, especially. Oh, absolutely, especially for when you've got public funds involved and you've got these guys trying to prove a point to go, this is why we're transitioning, because we can impact more people and everything else.
Yeah.
Having that data there to be able to go, do you know what? We've had 1,000 people through here. This is their average weight loss. This is their average. Now you've got actual data. So it's not just about this person showed up 3 times. Boom, we can track that. Yes. We can now track average weight loss, all these different measurements across the group. Visceral fat's increased by this, heart rate improved. All of that data that you guys can provide, suddenly we can start sifting through, or those guys can, and have a look at it and go, actually, our program works because of X, Y, and Z. And they can actually start then making the data work for them to then push back and say, look, our programs work. Now let's roll it out to X. Let's get more involved. Because, those guys work really well with the NHS. Yeah. Now, if we want more of the NHS departments to work with more of these leisure trusts, that data needs to be able to go out there and go, guys, just this is what we do. And I can imagine the likes of John and Andy and everyone else looking at it going, this is amazing.
That's exactly it. It's all well and good putting a program into place, but how are you judging the impact of the interventions? You can judge attendance, you can judge adherence to it. But then if you're only taking one measurement away at the end for a weight measurement, for example, well, health goes way beyond weight. And often what people were doing is they were tracking weight and they were tracking adherence and they were tracking the mental impact of it. Do you feel better within yourself after this program? But now they've shifted to really utilizing body composition. You're exactly right, Ryan. They're going, well, look at the impact on visceral fat we've had within the community for this program. Or when they're looking at prehab for cancer, for example, we know muscle mass is the most important metric for people, supporting people through cancer treatment. If they're starting progress with a really healthy muscle mass, there is a much higher chance of them successfully defeating the cancer.
All right. Wow.
Prehab for cancer courses are looking at muscle mass. If we can track people's muscle mass beforehand and then muscle mass afterwards, then you're right. You're showing the impact of it. You're showing it works. And if it works, when you've got to justify the application for the grant or extra funding or the fact that you're doing it in one centre, and we really should be doing this in every centre, when you show that black and white data, that's where people start going, okay, yeah, we can see this. We can see it works. We can see really clearly the work that you're doing is impacting the community. Here is your extra funding. Here are your extra locations. Here's your extra staff. Whatever it is that you need to make it a success, you need the data to support it. And again, it's a really enjoyable part of my role, because I can spend one day in a gym throwing some much heavier weights than I'm capable of throwing around now, and doing body composition scans around that interest point. And then my following day, I can be working with GM Active on a prehab for cancer, looking at the health metrics at a completely different demographic. And it's massively engaging and interesting for me as an individual, I guess, which is probably another reason why 6 years later I'm still here, because it's such an enjoyable role working with all these different partners that Tanita.
Well, the other one that you guys work with, which is taking off in the UK, is this EMS. So you guys work with Field Electric and people like that. Now, obviously, in the likes of Italy and France and Germany, EMS is massive.
Yeah.
In the UK, it's growing. And I think the only way you prove that these things work is by having the data that Tanita, because obviously in itself, it doesn't prove itself. You know what I mean? You exercise. But when you're saying to someone you only need to train for 20 minutes once every 4 to 5 days, I can understand why someone looks at you and goes, hold on, but aren't we supposed to train 150 minutes a week, 5
That's
times?
not what I'm told, right?
So how is EMS this? And it's just like, this is how we do it. We have data and working with you guys, they're able to prove that.
That's it. EMS is a really interesting one because we've worked really closely with Body Street as well. Across Europe, and as Body Street have come into the UK. And what the EMS franchisees and the EMS operators know is that people often will not lose weight when they do EMS because of the muscular stimulation. And if people are tracking health based on weight, they're going to book 6 sessions of EMS and they're not booking anymore because they've not lost weight. And that's what they're focused on. So it's for EMS operators, it's critical that they're tracking body composition because often that weight doesn't change, but muscle mass increases, body fat decreases, the person gets healthier, or the recovery. There's a lot of EMS use within the recovery sector as well. And the segmental analysis coming out of a Tanita device, looking at that right leg muscle mass against left leg muscle mass as a rehabilitation tool alongside EMS, just again justifies the impact it's having at a really, really basic level. And ultimately, if we can make things as easy to understand for members and for that operational level, we need to justify this to generate more finance. The easier and clearer we can make it, the better, I think, right, Ryan? Because
absolutely. Now, one thing we always get asked, or I always get asked, is when I try and push your types of machines, is how accurate these things are.
Yes.
Now, I obviously we've had this conversation before. Now, probably 15, 20 years ago, it's vastly different to the kit that you guys are able to produce now. So, what is the sort of level of accuracy that we're looking at these machines?
Within our professional range, our professional accuracy is validated against something called the 4-compartmental model of body composition. So we validate against DEXA, we validate against air distribution for body volume, deuterium dilution for hydration, and then weight. Because if you're not getting the weight right, everything else is going to be less accurate. And within our professional range, our accuracy ranges from 95 to 98% accurate against that 4C, the 4-compartmental model. But again, that support part of it is really important because any tool is always only as good as the operator. And if there's a lack of understanding about how that technology works, then you might get you hear sometimes about fluctuating BIA devices and the measurements are often up and down and inconsistent. We hear that feedback from lots and lots of manufacturers. And 99.9% of the time when we have that conversation, it's around operational use. Basically, you're not using it right.
Yeah.
You use it correctly and you get consistency. And I think within our professional range, there's the medical accreditation sitting alongside there. So the technology works. And a big part of our role is making sure everybody understands that technology. So then, again, you get the most out of it. There's no point having a medical grade anything if you're not using it in the way that you should. Use it.
Absolutely. And in terms of the company, you guys provide training for the clubs, don't you? In terms of how to understand the measurements, how to understand them.
Yeah, for sure. The training part of it was always a big part for me from day one. So within my first 12, 18 months at Tanita, we developed what was the UK's first, and I still think only, CIMSPA accredited training course in bioimpedance analysis technology. So not just Tanita technology, but bioimpedance technology in general. How does the technology work? How do you get the most out of it? So we have, at the top level, we have a CIMSPA accredited training course, and then we would do video catch-ups like this. We've got digital materials. We can run face-to-face courses. The support element of it is really important because, like you said, Ryan, without belittling treadmill manufacturers, treadmill's a treadmill. People can operate it often without any training. You get on, you press quick start. It'll do lots of other things, especially now. Some of the new treadmills will do a hell of a lot of other things. But ultimately, a member can use it by getting on, pressing quick start, and off they go. With a BIA device, that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's not the understanding there of how the machine works, people won't use it in the correct way. And therefore, they often won't use it a second time because it didn't work or I didn't understand it. So us educating the operators to educate the members on not only how it works, but why they should use it, looping all the way back to the start now. The conversation is often about the how and the why, not the should we have it in the first place. Educating the operators on how it works to allow them to educate their members on, one, how it works, but more importantly, why they should use it. That's where the vast majority of my sort of non-sales time is now spent, making sure that these things are in place and everybody's confident in using our technology.
And in terms of just in your experience, have you seen some innovative ways that clubs are using this to either drive sales, improve their retention? Do you see some great
yeah, I think for sure. I think the days of it's the body fat machine that sits in the corner are thankfully long gone. There's some really interesting methods in which places are now using to make it a genuine part of their business. So I've seen lots of gyms, particularly on the independent side of things, which is nice. They'll focus on a measurement. So they'll have like visceral fat month. And during that month, they'll feed their members lots of information about what visceral fat is, why they should be aware of visceral fat, what you can do to combat visceral fat and keep visceral fat low. And then you can measure it. Do you know you can measure it? Booking an appointment to come and measure visceral fat. And they'll cycle those measurements every month. They'll have a metabolic age month or a muscle mass month. And they're providing one, the measurement, two, the education, and three, that then culminates in good value. And if you're good value, people are not going anywhere, are they, Ryan? They're staying members for longer if you're providing good value. So I think that's probably one of the most innovative things that I've seen of recent times, a real focus on like an individual measurement and having a measurement of the month. But in terms of general operation, we always encourage gyms to go, well, one, you want everybody to use it, so make it accessible. But that doesn't mean it can't add a revenue stream. Do you operate membership tiers? And therefore, is the first measurement free for everybody, but then repeated measurements sit at a silver or gold or platinum membership tier, for example? So you're not just taking single payments off people, but you're trying to, add value to make
Energy Fitness do that. So Energy Fitness have a WOW membership. So you have your basic, and then they have additional things in their WOW membership. They have a further one. I can't remember what it's called. Epic, I think it's called. But in that WOW membership is your bioimpedance. I can't remember what. I think it's a body track or something like that.
They've got some body tracks in there for sure.
Yeah, but that's what they do. It's a really good way of getting for an extra £5 a month. They get all these extra benefits, and one of them is that. So it does encourage that. One of the big ones that I've seen it used for is corporate memberships. So as corporates got so hard to get into now, because every man and his dog that owns a gym tries to get into the big corporates, because obviously that's where loads of people are. Yeah. And one of the easiest ways to get in is doing a health awareness week or day. And because these pieces of kit are so easy just to lift up. Yeah. I mean, they're not light, some of them, but they are easy to carry.
They're pretty portable, yeah. That's it. I think it comes back to data, right? Doesn't it, Ryan? I think if you're trying that corporate angle and you're trying to support corporate well-being, how are you proving it? One, how are you creating and justifying the case? So your company needs us to help your staff be healthier. Why does it? Well, look at your body fat scores. Look at your metabolic ages. Your average working age is 36. Your average metabolic age is 47. You need us to help you. So by generating that by doing those initial measurements, you build the business case yourself to sell yourself to the corporates. And then, of course, what do? You regularly measure. You provide interventions and you regularly track those interventions. And you go, look at the impact we're having. We can do this again next year, can't we? And it's the data. The data tied in with the expertise of the staff, of course, is what brings the whole picture together for people, particularly in that corporate environment.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, time present, but in terms of because obviously you were obviously working in the technology field in our industry. Do you see anything hugely changing over the next few years or next 12 months in terms of what's coming in, or is it literally consolidating what's there and driving the use of that?
Yeah, I think there's always new technologies, right? There's always sort of new technologies within our field that often don't utilize bioimpedance analysis. I think what's quite telling, though, is bioimpedance analysis has been around for about 30 years.
Wow.
Like any new technology, it's advanced, it's improved. It's now at a level it's never been before in terms of the data that comes out of the machines, the accuracy and the consistency of the machines. But it's got bioimpedance analysis has had that longevity. What we've seen with some other technologies is they come, they make a little bit of noise, and then you don't hear about them for a while. And then they've gone again. And it's perhaps the next gimmick or trend that comes across for a short time. So I think in terms of health measurement and gathering metrics, bioimpedance analysis, I don't see going anywhere for sure, because it has that back in. It's always evolving and improving. All the manufacturers are always evolving and improving their technology. But I think in terms of how it's used, that's where I'm seeing the evolutions and the developments in the innovative uses of the technology. That's what's really improving and continues to improve. And I guess as software integrations and software improves alongside the BIA technology itself, that also opens new doors and new ways in which it can be used. Like our most recent integration, I think I've mentioned Pulse Fitness, I've mentioned technology, so I've got to mention eGym as well, right? One of our most recent integrations has been with the eGym Hub, and the eGym Hub collects that strength data, flexibility data, cardio data, and the metabolic data, and gives you a bio age. And that has increased. That has, I guess, brought on its own life and become a thing within itself. And that, for me, that's where I see the innovations happening. Not so much with the hardware, because the hardware is sound and the hardware is justified. It's the software that's going to keep improving, and the integration.
It's how we use that data then to keep people and get more people using it and maintaining their programs, isn't it? So,
that's what I'd encourage people keeping an eye out for. New innovative software programs, new innovative integrations that allow the reliable, trustworthy measurement tool to operate in different fields and to be appropriate, for different gym demographics.
And in terms of markets, is it obviously this move to wellness? I think could potentially be huge for you guys. I think as that takes off across the country, and Andy gets out there and pushes it even further, I definitely think that's a field that will massively grow. Do you guys do a lot more work in medical? Is those sides?
I think what we typically find is we have pretty much an even split between our medical business and our fitness business, if we call it fitness for the sake of clarity. And again, when I think back 4, 5, 6 years ago, those two were very distinct sections of our business. We had medical clients, we had fitness clients. There is now an ever increasing, collaboration and crossover between the two, where our what we would call medical partners are seeping into the fitness industry, often through the corporate angle or through, the physio into gym angle. And also the other way, we're seeing what we would classify as a fitness client operate more into that health and medical side of things. So it is great for us because it's the same bit of kit, it's the same software, just the applications of it are different depending on whether you're a clinician working in oncology or whether you're a personal trainer working with a fat loss client. But again, it's been interesting, really interesting to see those two things begin to cross over. And again, I think you're right with the likes of Andy King and Juanita at Stevenage Leisure, that health crossover is only going to improve. It's what if people genuinely want to make more of an impact, if they want to increase their revenue from their gym, if they want to genuinely impact community health more, they have to think beyond the four walls of the gym a little bit more. And that one key bit of tool, that one key tool to maximize that, we provide. And I think alongside that, we provide that knowledge, experience, and expertise as well on how they can do it. By working closely with GM Active, we see firsthand that the first class practice that they have, and then we can share that practice with other people looking to do the same thing.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm going to leave it on that note, but one final question, which we always ask our guests, Simon, in terms of what motivates you to do what you do, get out of bed and keep pushing forward?
I think for me, there's two things, maybe three things. One is family, right? We mentioned in our little pre-podcast, we welcomed a new addition to our family 2 weeks ago. So life's only getting more expensive. I need to pay bills. So that supporting the family is always a big motivator for me. But I think what helps is that I'm genuinely interested in this sector, and I'm genuinely interested in the conversations that we have. I don't wake up in the morning and think, another day talking about body composition, another day talking about Tanita. I wake up in the morning enthused about having those conversations because it's genuinely what interests me. I think I would struggle in a sales. Yeah, it does. I would struggle in a sales or commercial role where I didn't have a passion or an interest. If I was selling cars, for example, I am not interested in cars in the slightest. Nothing would motivate me to get out of bed to sell a car, apart from supporting my family. The fact that I have an interest and a passion in what I talk about every day, I think that's motivation within itself to try and, get better and do a little bit more and, impact more lives from now. A commercial role, not that health facilitator role.
Exactly. I mean, that comes across massively, Simon. So, I mean, the great thing is, one, you love the product. Secondly, you love the subject matter. And I think if anybody's interested in finding out more, wants to pick your brains on stuff, then obviously all your links and everything will be at the end of the podcast. I think the other thing for people to understand is these machines are not as expensive as what people think. Yes, there's a range, absolutely, and there's some real decent ones at the top there with a nice price tag. But there's a range for every business, and I think that's really important. So if people are looking at it going, I'd like to, but I know they're expensive, I think it's really worth getting in touch with you, because I think I know you brought out a new range which is geared at these small studios and the personal trainers. So and great piece of kit. You don't have to link it up to eGym or Technogym. You have your own app. I have it on my phone for mine. So there's a range of different options available to the clients.
That's it. I think that there's a lot of flexibility with us, I think. And I have that conversation again every week. I didn't think this would be affordable, but it is. And that's it's always quite refreshing when you have a gym owner. But it's often the independents as well, where it's your own money you're spending ultimately. Much more cautious, much more apprehensive about the cost. But then we have, as you mentioned, a range of devices, a range of different ways in which you can pay for those devices as well. And we're doing our biggest growth has definitely been in the independent and the small, even PT studio operator over the last sort of 12 to 18 months.
Fantastic. Well, on that note, we'll leave it there. I really appreciate your time, Simon. It's great to finally have you on. Always an interesting subject. So thank you very much for your time. And
pleasure.
We'll catch you again soon.
Thanks again, Ryan. Speak soon.